For us, a lot of times we have silly photos, like babies and kids doing silly things. And Steve, I know when you had your studio, you had kids doing silly things too.
Yeah.
And so many times, like a parent would sometimes, like, depending on the parent, would toss it to the side, like, no, I want the perfect photo. I'm like, really? Because when I see this photo, what I see is that 2-year-old who is just wild and crazy and full of life. And look at how happy they are. They love being 2, which means that they are in a happy family and they are free to express themselves in a way that a 2-year-old loves to do. This to me is 2. This says 2 right here in this photo, not a perfect smiling at the camera photo, right? That's 5. 2 is crazy and 2 is silly and 2 is full of energy and life and exploring the world. And when we talk about that, then the parents are like, oh my God, you're so right. Like, I never saw it that way. Hey guys, we are so excited that you are here with us today listening to our podcast. And this morning we have Jonathan, Steve, and myself all ready to give you guys some amazing conversation for the next 20 to 30 minutes. What do you say? Are we ready for this? Are we ready for a fun morning for our podcasters?
Super pumped.
Yes, super pumped. And why are we pumped? Because you guys just came back from an incredible week workshop.
Yeah, well, 3 days of sales. It was
sales. We like sales. Sales is money. Sales is making a difference in a lot of people's lives. And so I know Jonathan and Steve were at this workshop over in Scotland. I sadly was not there, and I have serious FOMO because I was stuck here doing things with my kids, children. But so I do have FOMO, and I want to know all about the difference that you made in these photographers' lives and how they're now going to compound that by going back to their studios and making a difference in the lives of their clients. So tell me all the goods. What did you guys do? Tell me the experience. What happened?
Well, Jono, do you go from your perspective? Because I was the one, delivering all the content. So from an onlooker's point of view, like, what was happening in the group? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that from the get-go, a lot of minds were blown, like within the first hour or two. So like Steve was saying, it was a 3-day workshop. It was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 to 5 each day. Then there were like dinners after on the Tuesday, Wednesday, where we mix with people. And literally within the first hour or two, like minds, you could see the brains working and ticking and people having serious aha moments. So I think that when you're at the workshop and you're there and you're learning and, you can go back and forth and you can ask questions and you can experience what other people are doing in their business too, I think that's when things really click because you're fully focused on just that in the moment. And one of the things that stood out for me, there was many things, but one of the key things that people really loved was we did an exercise where we talked about how to actually describe photography properly. And this happens typically during the design consultation, which is their sales experience, their in-person sales experience, where that you're playing the slideshow or you're choosing favorites and you're describing that photo. No, you're not describing that photo. You're describing.
I'm going to jump in there, Jono.
The meaning of what's there to the client, right? And a lot of people were started off with, this photo tells me, or this portrait tells me, or and they were talking about like the technical aspects of the photo, or the photo, as Rihanna likes to say. But when you really dive in and you talk, and Steve teaches you how to describe it properly, like minds were just blown and people were getting it. So Steve, how should we describe a photo emotionally to our clients?
Well, I think the first thing, Jono, is that we're not describing a photo. We're describing a person or that soul that you've now given an experience to. So it could be a dog, it could be a cat, it could be a child, it could be a person. And I think we're so conditioned into describing a photo rather than describing that person and what does this say about who they are. And teaching people how to see the story in their photograph. What are the elements in that photograph? What are the hands saying right now? What are the pressure of the fingertips saying? What are those eyes saying to somebody? Are they smiling with their eyes? What's the story that they're telling? What is the connection between those two people saying to somebody? And that's what people are buying. That's what people will pay money for. That's what they want to hear. The problem is that they've been so conditioned into looking at a photograph and looking for fault, looking for what's wrong. And the first thing people do is start to look for what's wrong. And so we can't just put a photo up and ask a client, what do you think of this? Because they're so conditioned into looking for what needs to be fixed or what's wrong. And they haven't been taught and they haven't been conditioned into looking for all of those elements that tell the story.
So Jeanine, I would love to hear and see a real life example right now. I know Steve is absolutely shattered because he got in at like 1 a.m. Our flight was delayed last night.
Yes.
But I'm going to do something. I'm going to break some rules. I'm going to share. For those of you watching on video, you'll see this. For those listening, we're going to put this photo for Rianne Whiteley, underneath in the show notes so you can see it. But let's just share this photo and let's get Steve to describe this photo emotionally, because this was one of the examples from the workshop. So Steve,
why don't we get you to do it first, Jono?
Absolutely not. Steve, my brain is fried. This is one of the exercises at the workshop. This is the photo. Alex Class, Mr. Class, Alessandro Poe took this amazing shot. And this is one of the exercises at the workshop. So Steve, how should we in our sales experiences in the design consults be describing this to our clients?
Okay, before Steve does that, and I'm going to give him a chance to think about it for a second, can you set the stage for our listeners as to when this is happening? Because I think we missed that. So when are you describing the photo to the client sitting in your design consultation room, Steve?
I think at the first point, you need to consider the conversations that you've had. And so those discovery calls really shape the language and the key words that you're going to use when describing this. So, I mean, I haven't had the conversations and this is one of those ones where Alex did share his testimonial video from the client and what they loved about it. So I had a little bit of insight, but not as much as I would had I had a full discovery call with multiple discovery calls with this couple. And there were 2 dogs. And so that's the first thing. So then as we're cropping and culling, we're looking for those stories. We're looking for those things that we want to share with them. And we want to put one of the strongest, most compelling, that hero shot at the start, because we want to impact people from the very beginning when they're choosing their photos. And so it's happening during the slideshow. We're not talking all the way through the slideshow, but we're just injecting some energy into the slideshow by injecting some of those things that the clients are looking for that we've managed to bring to life for them. So maybe in this case, it's the fact that this dog truly sees who he really is and truly understands him. And so if this photo is coming up and you've identified that in this photograph, then you might mention 3 or 4 words that relate to that. And whether that's, at the moment, in a slideshow, you don't have a lot of time, it might take you 2 photos to say that, maybe. And so injecting that, and then when you're choosing favorites, the very, very beginning, when we first start asking our clients to choose photos and you bring them up one by one, that's when this becomes most important, because we have to start by teaching our clients how to see and teaching our clients what to look for in the photos that they're choosing. So it happens it happens sort of in multiple areas in the cropping and culling for us, because in our heads, we need to start preparing for what we're going to show the clients. Then during the slideshow, we're injecting it with our clients. And then, of course, when we're asking our clients to choose their favorites, we need to almost recalibrate them to begin to look for what they love about a photograph, because they're so conditioned into looking for what's wrong. And so, it's really important that we begin to teach them how the story behind it, because then what happens is, I've seen clients when a photo first comes up, the expression on their face just tells me that they're going to say no, or they don't like it. But then when you tell them the story in what you see, or sometimes they actually say, no, I don't like that. But when you tell them the story behind it, suddenly that becomes their favorite photo. And often I've seen people buy, 30, 40s or collections that include that as a feature because you've told them the story. When we do this and they display that on their home, they start repeating that story to everybody that comes and sees their artwork in their home. And that's what gets us the referrals. That's what gives us that organic growth in our business. So the more we can sell wall art to people, and the stronger stories that we arm them with, we tend to get better referrals and more referrals. So that's, and it's important because clients, rather than looking at photos from a place of judgment, they're looking at photos and looking at them more positively, looking for the story behind it. And it's amazing how you only have to do this a couple of times, what we're about to do, maybe 2, maximum 3, and then the clients jump in and they start telling you and looking for all the things that they love about a photograph and the story behind it. And obviously we need to let them, tell their own story rather than us jumping in all the time and try to interpret that photograph for them. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jeanine?
That does answer my question.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So you want me to give this a go, Jono?
Yes. I can't wait to hear it. Let's go.
So if this came up first, I always start with, okay, what I love about this photo is just how intensely Jarvis sees you. There's almost an unspoken communication between the two of you that you know him and he knows you. I love how his paw is reaching out for you, knowing that he's there for you, but he's also giving you the space that you need right now to be your own person. I love how much joy he has being there for you. You can see it in his smile, can't you? And it's incredible how you both just are able to communicate. For me, this is a winner, isn't it? And that's pretty much, how I would start it. And, depending upon the story of the client, obviously the better you know a client, the more accurate you can be with how you describe that photo.
You said at the end, after you described it, you said, isn't it? So you're getting the clients to say yes. And that, Jeanine, that was another common thing that came up throughout the whole experience. It was like getting clients to say yes multiple times. And just like small things, small yeses, small micro commitments. And you're helping them to get into that mindset of saying yes. So that when they're choosing their favorites and they're saying yes, 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 they're used to saying yes. So when you actually go to, Steve design the wall collections and, the folio box, they're used to saying yes. They want to say yes. They're programmed to say yes, right?
Yes.
Question for you. Did you see that photograph differently once I described it or started to describe it?
So it's interesting to me, and it's funny because I don't have a dog. Tim has a dog. And I see how they react to each other, but I do have a cat, right? And my cat does that, right? My cat puts her paw on me and my cat will stare at me intensely. And I like what you described with that is how I feel like my cat's looking at me sometimes, right? And so I was kind of feeling like, the way he described that, that's so like how Clover looks at me, you know? And so it made me look at that photo in that relational way, right? And so I love the storytelling of it. And it does. If I was the client's not going to think that though. I mean, we do this for a living, right? So we're looking for stories, but the client's not looking for stories. And so like and it's interesting because I don't nearly do it a tenth of the way Steve does, right? I'm just, my brain's just not there yet and not, working better every day. But even when I describe something to a client, like for us, a lot of times we have silly photos, like babies and kids doing silly things. And Steve, I know when you had your studio, you had kids doing silly things too.
Yeah.
And so many times, like a parent would sometimes, like, depending on the parent, would toss it to the side, like, no, I want the perfect photo. I'm like, really? Because when I see this photo, what I see is that 2-year-old who is just wild and crazy and full of life. And look at how happy they are. They love being 2, which means that they are in a happy family and they are free to express themselves in a way that a 2-year-old loves to do. This to me is 2. This says 2 right here in this photo, not a perfect smiling at the camera photo, right? That's 5. 2 is crazy and 2 is silly and 2 is full of energy and life and exploring the world. And when we talk about that, then the parents are like, oh my God, you're so right. Like I never saw it that way, right? Because parents often want to move ahead so quickly in life with their kids and they don't stop to see what each age is. And so I find exactly what you said. Sometimes when you describe it to the client, what you see in the story you see behind the photo, they didn't see it because like you said, they're looking for everything wrong or they're looking for what they should be looking for or what they think a perfect photo should be. And they're looking for why it's not. And so when you tell them the story that you see behind it, a lot of times they're like, oh my God, you're so like, I never saw that before.
And it's important for us to share that because a lot of the times they don't see it. And the reality is with what you've just described, it's what they want to hold on to for themselves too, because everybody is looking for that inner child in themselves.
Yeah.
And that craziness, that 2-year-old is fearless. They are fearless in the playground. They don't have the inhibitions to walk up to somebody and assume they're going to be their friend. They don't have that fear of talking to somebody and dancing like nobody is watching them. And if that child can hold on to that part of themselves for just a few more years, what does that do to someone?
Yeah.
And that's the reminder that we bring for people. And, if we can tell that story, it just makes the person important rather than the photo important. And I know when I've had photographic experience with my children, I'm not buying a photo. I'm buying a part of my child. I'm buying a part of our relationship. I'm buying that part of their personality that I want to hold on to. But more importantly, I want them to realize and I want them to hold on to. And I think that's what we need to highlight to our clients because that's really what they're buying. They're not looking for a canvas. They're not looking for an acrylic. They're not looking for torn paper edged, whatever it is that you're selling. They're looking for that part of their child that they want to hold on to, or that part of themselves that they want to hold on to. And sometimes we need to help them see it.
On the subject of not buying canvas, another part of the training was the product walk and the formula for the product walk. So the product walk is where you're bringing them around the studio before the photo session, right? To show them.
You loved that bit, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely loved it. Because
before we walk into the product walk, what was your sort of feedback on, how the attendees, what was their reaction to describing the photos?
I think so. It was interesting because I think as photographers, for some of them, their minds went straight to portrait mode, or like they were using some of this jargon, like, look at this incredible moment in time. And when they said things like that, Steve would be like, no. They're not buying this moment in time. They're buying, their future confidence. So one example was a boudoir photo. and you were talking about, so I can't remember who was saying it, but they were talking about this moment in time. We've captured this moment in time, and Steve's like, no. They're not buying a moment in time. Nobody's dead. They're not buying a memory. Nobody's dead. They're buying their future. They're buying themselves. They're buying their future confidence. They're buying the fact that they've, can celebrate that, pride they feel in themselves, or whatever it might be.
This is a memory, something about this beautiful memory captured a moment in time. And, for me, a memory is something that's in the past. And, what people are looking for is that part of themselves that they want to celebrate now and forever. And our job is to give people what they love about themselves forever. And that's what we've got to focus on.
Look at that. He choked me up so much I had to mute myself. It made me cough and cry. Good Lord. Sorry.
Yeah, so that for the attendees, I think a lot of light bulbs went off at that moment in time. Lol.
And I think for a lot of people, it's something that they have to continue to practice because it's not something that we've been conditioned to do, even though we are in this industry. For some reason, I find most people aren't able to describe a photo through the eyes of a client or through the eyes of that person. We tend to describe photos through the eyes of an award system, maybe. I don't know. We're looking at light, we're looking at composition, and we talk about how the light, I love how the light is, hitting your cheekbones there and how your eyes are sparkling. And that's all the photography stuff. But all the emotional stuff is a lot of the reasons why clients are there and why they'll buy. And so we need to avoid all the photographic jargon, all that photographic phrasing and words, and start using all our clients' keywords. What are those things that they're looking for? What did they tell you that they want to celebrate about who they are?
And one other aha moment on that was the superficial elements. So people went sometimes to the like, look how amazing you look here. Look how beautiful you look. And where they were talking about that superficial surface level stuff. And like, that was another big aha for people, I think, that they need to go beyond that. Because I feel like you see with other educators, when they're talking about variety of photograph, when they talk variety, they think, how people look. What they look like on a superficial level. And that's how they describe variety. Whereas I think after this and understanding how to describe photography, and then when you got into the cropping and culling and how to create a slideshow and how to, show your photographs so they can choose their favorites, like, I got a better understanding of variety, but we won't go there for now. But, that was a big aha as well, I think, for people. I
have a question for the two of you. Well, maybe more for Steve, but maybe Jonathan, since he's been there now.
Well, now that Jono's been there, let's see if Jono can answer it. Because
oh my God, putting me on the spot.
You don't even know what my question is yet. So when we were prepping for the podcast and getting, the three of us just, catching up and getting ready for this, you made a comment, Steve, that you knew people who prepping for coming to the workshop had higher sales because their focus was on the story and focus was on this. And from history that when people leave the workshop, they have higher sales because they're immediately, like, their focus is on everything that you guys talked about. What is it, though, that makes us slip back into our old habits? Like, why do we slip back into our old habits? And then how do we prevent that? Like, how did you prevent that when you had your studio? How did you prevent from because it's so easy to talk about the superficial and to get back in old habits. How do you keep that fresh to always focus on the story of the client?
Am I answering this or is Jono answering this?
Oh, I don't know. Who should answer
No, that's a Steve question. Well, it was directed at Steve. So
it was directed
at definitely a Steve question.
So I think, first of all, before the workshop, we have 3 or 4 weeks of interaction. And even before, because I want to get to know everybody and I want to get to know what I'm working with, and we get people to share photographs of their studio, photographs of their design consult areas. If they don't have one, what's their setup like? And then some of their shoots. And we're already beginning to give feedback to people, because I can't cover everything in 3 days.
Right.
And so we start giving feedback, we start giving hints on how people can improve things, or maybe it's things that they need to take away out of their studio because it's distracting. In a lot of cases, that's what it is. The subliminal messages that we're sending to our clients are all of those, create a lot of the objections, because we've got maybe the wrong thing displayed, or it's in the wrong place, or just the setup is wrong. And so when we fix those things, then people, we had a couple of people say, "Oh my God, I've had 3 sales over $3,000, and we never get sales over $3,000, and my average sales at $1,200, but this week it's jumped, and they haven't even been to the workshop yet." And I think just focusing on the right things and that mindset shift really helps people to focus. The reason why I like adding a month, like after the workshop now, it's implementation time. And so a workshop's only valuable with what you can implement. And so that's why we have a group open for a month now, where all the attendees, I'm prompting them on what they're going to implement now. And they're meant to be sharing what they're doing. And so when somebody's been in business, Jeanine, for 30 years, it's hard to unlearn all of that muscle memory.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard not to go back to those old habits. And I think that's kind of what you're asking. And I think that the more people can share and the more you can be around other people that are on the same journey, I think that's what's going to help consolidate that. A few of the people were inner circle members, and so they're part of our community anyway. And so I think being around like-minded people, but not only just being around them, sharing what's happening daily.
So partaking in the community of people who are, like you said, on the same journey.
So I've had a lot of people who, I would say, I don't care what you put in the group today. I want you to just share something you've done today. And it's those people that are sharing more about what they're doing every day, getting advice, and just having open conversations, even though it's through text or a group, because of the groups online. It really does help clarify your thinking and begin to embed better habits and reshaping habits, because it takes, is it 6 weeks? It takes 6 weeks to
6 weeks to unform a habit and form a new one.
A habit. And that's why I've designed the workshops to realistically, they last 7-8 weeks, in that there's that time before the workshop. There's obviously that time during the workshop. The dinners, I feel, are really important, because it's when everybody gets to feel included, share where they're at, mix with people that have maybe been to the workshop multiple times, and find out about how they've implemented things. But then now, with the group being open for another month, if they're able to share what they love or share what they're doing and get advice on that, implemented, it just fuels everybody in the group. And so everybody's learning from each other. And I really feel that the community aspect, being around like-minded people, is the key to reshaping beliefs, because it's the mindset and the beliefs that make the biggest difference. And I think that's why people are getting great success even before the workshop happens, because we're already beginning to reshape people's beliefs even before they get there.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think sometimes there was one person at the workshop who asked, I just need to feel confident that I can do this. And, we were saying that the only way to build your confidence is to do it. But I think sometimes being given the permission to do it by someone else and borrowing that confidence is huge too.
I think too, with that, being given the steps in getting there, because sometimes it's it looks like a big task. And a lot of us are just making it up as we go. But given the steps and breaking it down, and just achieving those small steps leads to a better result in the end. You don't have to have it 100% perfect to get results, which is the beauty of all of this. So I think a lot of people just need to understand the psychology behind why they're doing something, and it just reshapes the way they do it.
There's so much. How have we spoken for 30 minutes already?
I know. I just looked up. I'm like, I was going to ask another question. I'm like, oh my goodness, no, it really needs to be Jonathan wrapping this up. This is a really fast conversation.
Well, if you had one more question, that's, some of our podcasts go over by a couple of minutes. So if you had one more question, what would that question be? I know I didn't layer that very well, Steve. Forgive me. Anyway.
You didn't give me any time there, Jonathan. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I guess that was my, it's important to learn how to tell these stories, but I think it's important to learn every day how to set your focus on your client and the stories that you want to tell through the photography that you're creating for them. Steve, I think that you've always, and you've said this to me many times, the word capture versus create. And we're not capturing things, we're creating them. And so there's certain things that you have to switch your mindset every single day. And I hope our listeners, I know they weren't at the workshop, but I hope that they can take some inspiration from what we're discussing and then, come join us, because I think the community is a big aspect of it. So because we talk together, we brainstorm together, and we share life together, and we share life in our studios together. And that is the best way with because otherwise you just slip back in, and it's so easy to get bogged down by business and the everyday and to forget why it is that we're here.
As you were talking, Jeanine, you reminded me another aspect of, one of the key fundamentals where I think a lot of what I believe comes through in the workshops is that it's a collaboration. So when we're talking about creating something for a client, really making it a collaboration between your client and yourself. Because it was really what a lot of the attendees struggled with was the belief that they're buying my work, and whether they like my work, and whether they're going to spend money on my work. But the reality is that this should be a collaboration. It should be something that we're creating together, and that the clients get buy-in from the very beginning, and that we're getting their buy-in at multiple stages of the photographic journey for them. And especially during that sale, making them feel like it's a collaboration between you and them all the way through. So then that way they never feel sold to, and they never feel as though this has been about the money. The result has been that, people are getting, great sales out of this, but it's not about us creating something. It's about, for them, it's about collaborating with our clients and creating something together. And I think that's what's so beautiful about having this relationship with your client and creating something that they value, because they feel as though they've contributed to that. And, the client's the hero. We've got to make them the hero. And if we can make them feel like they've collaborated in this and made it something that they've enjoyed, then how can they not buy from you? How can they not value what we've done? And how can they not share? At the end of the day, what we want is happy clients, and for us to build long-term relationships with them, and for them to then talk about that part of them that we found, and for them to send us more people just like them, so our business grows organically. That's what's exciting.
It is exciting. It is very exciting.
So the quickest, fastest, and easiest way for you as a listener to experience that sense of community that we were just talking about is to be a member of the Difference Maker Inner Circle, because every single week we meet multiple times on Zoom. We have training courses. We have the community where we go through how to deliver this life-changing photographic experience for your clients and how to create those clients for life. So to become a member, just click the button below this video, apply to join, and we cannot wait to see you inside the community where you will join other difference makers who are absolutely crushing it for their clients and for their business.
Well done. That was the wind-up, Jono. Well done.
What an awesome podcast. I wish we could go on forever, but
I know.
Take us home, Jeanine.
Well, that's all for us, guys, and we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast and seeing you in the Difference Maker Revolution, joining our inner circle. And that's it. So bye from me.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.